Good evening and welcome back to The Longing with me, Wazations. So, another day, some more digging to be done. Now 56 coal. And today, I think we're going to read a little bit more of Thus Spoke Zarathustra, once we've done a little bit more digging. But let's indeed see how far we get. In our little bit of digging. And we are on day 20, I think. Yeah, day 20. So we've almost spent double that amount of time in terms of time passed. Not quite. We're still 4 days off that, off doubling it, but still 36 days worth of time passed in 20 days. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's a good start. I'll certainly take it. Shortens it by 14 days so far. Which is no small amount of time. Although I have to be honest, these last 20 days have gone by fairly rapidly. The time has passed. Oh, blimey. I was tired before I started recording, which is why I'm a bit late with this video. Never mind how tired actually recording this is going to make me. It's amazing what it'll do. And I do genuinely wonder how far we're going to go with this digging. How much there is to dig. Because there surely can't be much, well, I was about to say there surely can't be much more to dig, but of course there definitely could be more to dig, owing to the fact that what is it? We are underground, and digging is what is done underground. So saying that there surely can't be much more to dig is a falsity. After all, the Earth, well, has limits, but certainly not limited quite as much as I'm making out to be. However, we have double backed on ourselves and gone past where we started. I wonder if it just keeps zigzagging actually. Or if we'll be required to dig out whole sections. Which would be interesting. Yes, that would be interesting. If we had to carve out ceiling to floor. Well, it does feel like we're getting to a more open area, as we seem to be opening a roof up. which would be useful. Very useful indeed. Though I may actually end the digging there, because we have made quite a significant amount of progress compared, so that we may move back to reading Thus Spoke Zarathustra, which I also want to make progress on, and that is considerably slower, it seems, than mining, weirdly. So, in just a moment we will stop digging. And we're going to stop digging round about now. We've made a good sizable dent there. Wait. The wall is getting harder on the left. I think I should start chipping to the right. If it's getting harder... It's not saying it's impossible, it's just saying it's getting harder. So does that mean I can still get through it, or not? Maybe I can manually dig my way through. Anyway, let's read some more of Thus Spoke Zarathustra. (15) The 1001 Goals. Many lands saw that Zarathustra. It's going to be a difficult read tonight. Many lands saw Zarathustra, and many peoples. Thus he discovered the good and bad of many peoples. No greater power did Zarathustra find on earth than good and bad. No people could live without first valuing. If a people will maintain itself, however, it must not value as its neighbours valueth. Much that passed for good with one people was regarded with scorn and contempt by another. Thus I found it. Much found I here called bad, which was there decked with purple honours. Never did the one neighbour understand the other. Ever did his soul marvel at his neighbour's delusion and wickedness. A table of excellencies hangeth over every people. Lo, it is the table of their triumphs. Lo, it is the voice of their will to power. It is laudable what they think hard. What is indispensable and hard they call good. And what relieveth in the direst distress, the unique and hardest of all, they extol as holy. Whatever maketh them rule and conquer and shine, to the dismay and envy of their neighbours, they regard as the high and foremost thing, the test and the meaning of all else. Verily, my brother, if thou knewest but a people's need, its land, its sky, and its neighbour, then wouldst thou divine the law of its surmountings, and why it climbeth up that ladder to its hope. Always shalt thou be the foremost and prominent above others. No one shall thy jealous soul love, except a friend. That made the soul of a Greek thrill. Thereby went he his way to greatness. To speak truth and be skilful with bow and arrow, so seemed it alike, pleasing and hard to the people from whom cometh my name, the name which is alike pleasing and hard to me. To honour father and mother, and from the root of the soul to do their will. This table of surmounting hung another people over them, and became powerful and permanent thereby. To have fidelity, and for the sake of fidelity to risk honour and blood, even in evil and dangerous courses, teaching itself so, another people mastered itself, and thus mastering itself became pregnant and heavy with great hopes. Verily, men have given unto themselves all their good and bad. Verily, they took it not, they found it not, it came not unto them as a voice from heaven. Values did man only assign to things in order to maintain himself. He created only the significance of things, a human significance. Therefore calleth he himself man, that is, the valuator. Valuing is creating. Hear it, ye creating ones. Valuation itself is the treasure and jewel of the valued things. Through valuation only is there value, and without valuation the nut of existence would be hollow. Hear it, ye creating ones. Change of values, that is, change of the creating ones. Always doth he destroy who hath to be a creator. Creating ones were first of all peoples, and only in late times individuals. Verily, the individual himself is still the latest creation. Peoples once hung over them tables of the good. Love which would rule and love which would obey, created for themselves such tables. Older is the pleasure in the herd than the pleasure in the ego, and as long as the good conscience is for the herd, the bad conscience only saith, ego. Verily, the crafty ego, the loveless one, that seeketh its advantage in the advantage of many, it is not the origin of the herd, but its ruin. Loving ones was it always, and creating ones, that created good and bad. Fire of love gloweth in the names of all the virtues, and fire of wrath. Many lands saw Zarathustra, and many peoples. No greater power did Zarathustra find on earth than the creations of the loving ones. Good and bad are they called. Verily, a prodigy is the power of praising and blaming. Tell me, ye brethren, who will master it for me? Who will put a fetter upon the 1,000 necks of this animal? 1,000 goals have there been hitherto, for 1,000 peoples have there been. Only the fetter for the 1,000 necks is still lacking. There is lacking the one goal. As yet humanity hath not a goal. But pray tell me, my brethren, if the goal of humanity be still lacking, is there not also still lacking humanity itself? Thus spake Zarathustra. 16. Neighbour love. Ye crowd around your neighbour, and have fine words for it. But I say unto you, your neighbour love is your bad love of yourselves. Ye flee into your neighbour from yourselves, and would fain make a virtue thereof, but I fathom your unselfishness. The thou is older than the I. The thou hath been consecrated, but not yet the I. So man presseth nigh unto his neighbour. Do I advise you to neighbour love? Rather do I advise you to neighbour flight, and to the furthest love. Higher than love to your neighbour is love to the furthest and future ones. Higher still than love to men is love to things and phantoms. The phantom that runneth on before thee, my brother, is fairer than thou. Why dost thou not give unto it thy flesh and thy bones? But thou fearest and runnest unto thy neighbour. Ye cannot endure it with yourselves, and do not love yourselves sufficiently. So ye seek to mislead your neighbour into love, and would fain gild yourselves with his error. Would that ye could not endure it with any kind of near ones, or their neighbours. Then would ye have to create your friend and his overflowing heart out of yourselves. Ye call in a witness when ye want to speak well of yourselves, and when ye have misled him to think well of you, ye also think well of yourselves. Not only doeth he lie, who speaketh contrary to his knowledge, but more so, he who speaketh contrary to his ignorance. And thus speak ye of yourselves in your intercourse, and belie your neighbour with yourselves. Thus saith the fool, association with men spoileth the character, especially when one hath none. The one goeth to his neighbour, because he seeketh himself, and the other because he would fain lose himself. Your bad love to yourselves maketh solitude a prison to you. The furthest ones are they who pay for your love to the near ones, and when there are but 5 of you together, a 6th must always die. I love not your festivals either. Too many actors I found there, and even the spectators often behaved like actors. Not the neighbour do I teach you, but the friend. Let the friend be the festival of the earth to you, and a foretaste of the Superman. I teach you the friend and his overflowing heart, but one must know how to be a sponge if one would be loved by overflowing hearts. I teach you the friend in whom the world standeth complete, a capsule of the good, the creating friend who hath always a complete world to bestow. And as the world unrolled itself for him, so rolleth it together again for him in rings, as the growth of good through evil, as the growth of purpose out of chance. Let the future and the furthest be the motive of thy today. In thy friend thou shalt thou love the Superman as thy motive. My brethren, I advise you not to neighbour love, I advise you to furthest love. Thus spake Zarathustra. 17. The way of the creating one. Wouldst thou go into isolation, my brother? Wouldst thou seek the way unto thyself? Tarry yet a little, and hearken unto me. He who seeketh may easily get lost himself. All isolation is wrong, so say the herd. And long didst thou belong to the herd. The voice of the herd will still echo in thee, and when thou sayest, I have no longer a conscience in common with you, then will it be a plaint and a pain. Lo, that pain itself did the same conscience produce, and the last gleam of that conscience still gloweth on thine affliction. But thou wouldst go the way of thine affliction, which is the way unto thyself. Then show me thine authority and thy strength to do so. Art thou a new strength and a new authority? A first motion, a self-rolling wheel? Canst thou also compel stars to revolve around thee? Alas, there is so much lusting for loftiness. There are so many convulsions of the ambitions. Show me that thou art not a lusting and ambitious one. Alas, there are so many great thoughts that do nothing more than the bellows. They inflate and make emptier than ever. Free, dost thou call thyself? Thy ruling thought would I hear of, and not that thou hast escaped from a yoke. Art thou one entitled to escape from a yoke? Many a one hath cast away his final worth when he hath cast away his servitude. Free from what? What doth that matter to Zarathustra? Clearly, however, shall thine eye show unto me. Free for what? Canst thou give unto thyself thy bad and thy good, and set up thy will as a law over thee? Canst thou be judge for thyself, and avenger of thy law? Terrible is aloneness with the judge and avenger of one's own law. Thus is a star projected into desert space, and into the icy breath of aloneness. Today sufferest thou still from the multitude, thou individual. Today hast thou still thy courage unabated, and thy hopes. But one day will the solitude weary thee, one day will thy pride yield, and thy courage quail. Thou wilt one day cry, I am alone. One day wilt thou see no longer thy loftiness, and see too closely thy lowliness. Thy sublimity itself will frighten thee as a phantom. Thou wilt one day cry, all is false. There are feelings which seek to slay the lonesome one. If they do not succeed, then must they themselves die. But art thou capable of it, to be a murderer? Hast thou ever known, my brother, the word disdain? And the anguish of thy justice in being just to those that disdain thee. Thou forcest many to think differently about thee, that that charge they heavily to thine account. Thou camest nigh unto them, and yet wentest past, for that they never forgive thee. Thou goest beyond them, but the higher thou risest, the smaller doth the eye of envy see thee. Most of all, however, is the flying one hated. How could ye be just unto me, must thou say? I choose your injustice as my allotted portion. Injustice and filth cast they at the lonesome one. But, my brother, if thou wouldst be a star, thou must shine for them none the less on that account. And be on thy guard against the good and just. They would fain crucify those who devise their own virtue. They hate the lonesome ones. Be on thy guard also against holy simplicity. All is unholy to it that is not simple. Fain, likewise, would it play with the fire of the faggot and stake. Yes. And be on thy guard also against the assaults of thy love. Too readily doth the recluse reach his hand to any one who meeteth him. To many a one mayest thou not give thy hand, but only thy paw. And I wish thy paw also to have claws. But the worst enemy thou canst meet wilt thou thyself always be. Thou waylayest thyself in caverns and forests. Thou lonesome one, thou goest the way to thyself, and past thyself, and thy 7 devils leadeth thy way. A heretic wilt thou be to thyself, and a wizard, and a soothsayer, and a fool, and a doubter, and a reprobate, and a villain. Ready must thou be to burn thyself in thine own flame. How couldst thou become new if thou hast not first become ashes? Thou lonesome one, thou goest the way of the creating one. A god wilt thou create for thyself out of thy 7 devils. Thou lonesome one, thou goest the way of the loving one. Thou lovest thyself, and on that account despisest thyself, as only the loving ones despise. To create desireth the loving one, because he despiseth. What knoweth he of love who hath not been obliged to despise just what he loved? With thy love go into thine isolation, my brother, and with thy creating, and late only will justice limp after thee. With my tears go into thine isolation, my brother. I love him who seeketh to create beyond himself, and thus succumbeth. Thus spake Zarathustra. I think I'm going to stop the reading there, so that I can get it edited and uploaded in time. I still don't really understand what this is about, to be quite honest, as I'm sort of just reading as I'm going, and because I'm saying it out loud, it's not really going in. It's kind of shortcutting to the mouth. It's got something to do with... Oh, excuse me. From what I understand, it's got something to do with not succumbing to the... what are the words? The words are failing me. To the masses, and to think for them, for yourself, to reflect inwardly about why you feel certain ways, I suppose. I don't really know. I'm just spitballing there. Could be any number of things. But anyway, we made quite a decent amount of progress on the tunnelling. Got through a few more pages. I think we got through 15 pages of Thus Spoke Zarathustra, which isn't bad. We've only got about 20 odd, maybe 30, low 30s left, pages wise, for Thus Spoke Zarathustra. And then we'll be on to Moby Dick, which will be a whole other setup. I really don't know how I'm going to go through that one. I might have to do a chapter, or maybe a set number of pages a day, either a chapter or a set number of pages, because there's 1,200 pages or something, I think, in this version, just because of it being on a smaller paper. But anyway, I'm going to say thank you very much for joining me today. Have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon or night, no matter what time of day it is. Have a wonderful one of it. And I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.